everything to there. Just like before it was all, like crazy numbers, budget hearings, nothing was in order. So everything is in order.
Out there Wild West? Yeah.
Because that one.
It's going to be an awesome meal. Well, as I told somebody, we had a meeting, we had my consider East Park County, West Harris County.
And then everybody stays together. Just easier. It's always a mess.
Old stale building, Mama's mean. Something like that. Oh yeah, yesterday was their first day and they absolutely loved it. So, I mean, hello, how are you? Hey, Chandler. That's fine. Sir. What are you grabbing?
The audience participation. We're going to print out the backup email. We're going to print out
Good morning and welcome to the Thursday, August 15th, 2024 Tarrant County Budget Hearing. Our invocation today will be led by Chaplain Duffy. Please rise for the invocation and pledges to our flag.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this day. We realize it's not a day that we chose, but it was by grace that you gave it to us. But now we're here, Lord. Bless us to do something with it. Today is a very stressful day for some, but not for others. Lord, we pray for this budget meeting. We pray, Lord, that you'll move according to your will in each one of our lives and each one of our departments. Lord, some of us going to leave with a no, and some of us going to leave with a maybe, and some of us going to leave with a we will fund it. But Lord, whatever the outcome is, I pray that you move according to your will in whatever the situation is, that the best result will end up where it's supposed to be. Lord, I pray for the ones that are sitting at the table that's making the decisions. I pray for this whole council, Lord, the judge and all that are concerned here. Lord, that you'll move in each one of our lives, that you'll bless this county according to your will. It's in Jesus' name I pray and ask it all. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the Texas flag.
I, the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. You may be seated. You know what? I didn't even actually do the call to order, but it ought to be pretty obvious sitting up here that we have a quorum and all are in attendance. So we will move into our work session, which is discussion and action concerning Tarrant County's fiscal year 2025 budget. Mr. Merritt, are you up first?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
With only one agenda item, I'm happy to announce I have no items to pull down from the agenda today.
Okay, good.
Okay, well, good morning, Judge and Commissioners, and thank you for your time this morning to present to you the Tarrant County 2025 proposed budget. the orientation for today. So the way that we typically handle this is I'll get up here first, make a couple of opening comments. Following me will be our county auditor, just to kind of discuss revenues and where we are from that perspective. And then we'll have the budget department. I believe Mr. Cohn's coming up to kind of talk about some specifics in the budget, just for your knowledge. We do have a meeting posted for tomorrow as a kind of a holdover meeting if for some reason we do not get through today. We don't believe we're going to need that meeting. However, we just want everyone to be aware of that. And at the end of this meeting, if we are able to conclude, we would ask that the court make a motion to cancel tomorrow's meeting. And with the approval of that cancellation, should it take place, we will post a cancellation on our website just so everyone is aware that that meeting has been canceled. We do have a hard stop around noon today. We have at least one court member that needs to be gone. I don't anticipate this going that long, but we'll kind of see how the day goes. Okay, so in your packets, you should have my letter, which basically kind of talks about some of the highlights of this year's budget. So I'm going to start with that. I was never a David Letterman fan, but he always did a lot of top 10 lists. And I thought it was important that we just kind of talk about some of the highlights of this budget, and then certainly we'll let the budget department get into more of the specifics. So the first thing I want to note is, again, this is a proposed tax rate of 0.1875, which is below the no new revenue rate, and this will reduce the tax burden on homeowners, businesses, and residences in Tarrant County. At the court's direction, this does include the maximum 20% homestead exemption that the court voted on back on June 18th, as well as the 50% child care exemption that they voted on at the same meeting. This does include a 3% merit increase pool-based for all employees within Tarrant County, and it provides the structure increases that the court voted on for both law enforcement and non-law enforcement. This funds one net new position in the budget, showing that there are, it will look like 22 new positions, but there's actually a reduction in force of 21 positions. It sets our contribution rate for TCDRS at 11.88%. This basically will allow us to fund the 1% COLA and maintain the above 90% funded liability ratio that we have with our TCDRS system. It maintains the county's portion of group insurance of $11,400. If you remember, we had a criminal justice reorganization committee that met several months ago now to reorganize the criminal justice courts. That is included in this budget and actually results in a net savings of approximately $300,000 with that reorganization. Finally, court members, I'll say that this transfers the resource connection and county precincts administration staff to the general fund. Okay, so that's kind of the top 10 highlights that I have for you. Let's see here. So we're going to go into the slides from here. So
Wait,
there we go. Oh,
question.
sorry. Yes, sir.
Transferring the resource connection to the general fund, does that mean it's no longer an enterprise fund?
That's my understanding, but I'll defer to Helen.
Yes. Correct. It was not self-sustaining.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So moving in, some of the things that we typically talk about at the beginning of the budget meeting is kind of where the county, not Tarrant County government is, but Tarrant County as a whole is. So we're just going to show you a couple of slides that kind of give you some insight into where Tarrant County as a whole is currently based on the certified tax roll that we received from the appraisal district back on July 25th. So the first slide here is certainly talking about the estimated net taxable value coming into the entirety of Tarrant County. And what you will see by the graph is we've actually seen a trend up over the last 10 years. One thing I would point out that is between tax year 23 and this year tax 24, obviously you've seen less of an increase. Now it's still an increase, but the increase is only about 2.24%. So we were at 283.1 billion and we went up to about 283.7 billion. So less of an increase this year than we have seen in previous years, but yet still an increase. Next is mineral leases. We've actually seen a significant drop in mineral leases. Last year's value was about $2.65 billion, and this year came in at about $415.5 million. For Tarrant County, that represents a drop of approximately 84% in mineral leases. Now, that looks like a big drop, but I think it's important to note in Tarrant County with our budget, mineral levy only represents about 0.146% of the budget. So while it may look like a big drop here coming in from a mineral lease value, it's a small portion of what Tarrant County actually receives in levy. Talked about the tax rate for a second. So consistently over the last 10 years, Tarrant County has either held constant the tax rate that they had from previous years, or they have reduced the rate. This year is a year where we are proposing a reduction in the rate. So the current tax rate is 0.1945, and again, our proposed rate for next year is 0.1875. That's both inclusive of the M&O, or maintenance and operations, as well as the debt service. I'd like to point out that on our rate, if you notice, there's two colors on there for the stacked chart. The white or lighter color blue is our M&O rate, or maintenance and operation, and debt service is the darker blue color. So only about 8.4% of our tax rate actually goes to take care of debt service. So what does that say? That says Tarrant County would rather pay with things with a check instead of paying with a credit card. We don't like paying interest unless we just absolutely have to. So I think that actually shows a very astute court decision to keep the debt rate low in order to maximize the use of cash in order to fund some of the capital projects and things like that we've seen in the past. Moving on to the comparison of current tax rates. So we don't have the information for tax year 2024 from all of the other entities yet. We typically look 1 year in arrears to see based on what's published and is available. And as you can see, even as of tax year 23 under our old rate of 195, we are by far the lowest of any of the 6 counties that are out there. And as soon as we get tax year 2024 information, we'll be happy to share that with the court just to see how we measure up for this year. Looking at new construction. New construction is something that we also watch just to see growth of the county and see how things are moving along. And as you can see, from 2015 to about 2020, you had a trend up significantly, if you will, for many years, and then the pandemic hit and things slowed down a lot, which was reflected beginning in the 2021 year. And actually since then, this is actually the first year we have seen a decrease in the new construction taxable value coming into Tarrant County. So it's about a 10% decrease.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
I was going to opine that perhaps that's not a real decrease. I think it's a function of what's going on at TAD and their inability to come up with precise numbers that we can work from. This 10% decrease is counterintuitive. If you look at the construction activity that's going on across this county, one cannot discern just by sheer eyeballing it that there is a decrease, and that causes me to wonder whether that's a real number or not, or whether it's a function of TAD's transitional inability to get things right.
I was going to echo, or I will echo something similar. It's not just the new construction that I'm concerned about. It doesn't make much sense. It's the current values as well. Almost every single person,
Right.
to a person that I've spoken to, probably everybody in this room, your personal taxable value has gone up about 10%. My personal taxable value went up 10%. It doesn't make any sense that it would be flat from the year prior. I just, again, I know the folks at TAD, they've had issues with software in the last year or so. I know everybody relies on these numbers, every single taxing entity, school districts, cities. all the rest. So I'm hopeful that this is correct, but it's concerning just to see that type of number. I mean, if we had a significant slowdown in construction or property values had gone down like they did in '08 and the rest, okay, but that doesn't appear to be the case this year. So it is a bit questionable. I don't know if you've interfaced with TAD much. I know that you deal with them directly. So perhaps they've given you a little color there?
Yes, sir. So a couple things. Those sentiments has been shared by some of my colleagues as far as the city managers. I've talked to the Fort Worth city manager. I've talked to the Arlington city manager, a couple of others. They've kind of discussed the same thing. We kind of compare notes, if you will, of, well, we're seeing this, what are you seeing, just to see if they're seeing the same trends or things like that. When we first got our official certified roll, we actually asked to meet with the appraisal district, and we've had subsequent meetings with both the auditor's office and budget to understand the numbers as far as where they were coming from and at the timeliness of when we received the numbers. So all I can say is certainly we have to trust the certified roll that they give us. But some of those concerns that both of us have been brought up is we have to use the numbers that have been provided to us, but we did have conversations with them to understand those numbers and ensure that we were using the correct numbers for our calculations in our budget.
Your second phrase was correct. We have to use the numbers that they provided us with. The first one was incorrect. We don't have to trust the numbers.
Understood, sir. Thank you for that correction.
And it's challenging for those municipalities, even for us, of course. Obviously, we're able to accomplish our goals by setting the tax rate within those numbers, but a city like Fort Worth, they actually had to raise their tax rate
Half a
the
cent,
first
yes,
time
sir.
in 3 decades, and you can't look at the explosive growth in Fort Worth and say that values went down. And so they raised their tax rate, and they're still below no new revenue, but they had to raise their tax rate. And so there are real challenges. I don't know. Maybe it's correct. Maybe it's been wrong all along. I don't know. It doesn't seem right.
Sure. One thing I'll say is there's one thing that what city manager taught me is if you see a lot of cranes swinging in the air, that's certainly good for your city or your county. And around Tarrant County, at least, I certainly see a lot of cranes swinging. So. Okay, moving on to the average single-family home value. Another area where we've actually seen the first decrease over the last 10 years for Tarrant County. Not much of a decrease, but about a 3%, 2.96% decrease is what we've calculated. So we've actually seen that go down from $285,000 down to about $276,000. So again, something else that we watch as kind of an economic indicator of how things are going. So last slide for me here, just kind of talking about where the rubber meets the road. As everybody knows, your tax bill, your property tax bill is based on really two things. A tax rate that is set by a governmental body such as the Commissioner's Court times the actual value of your home equals whatever the levy is that you would pay for an annual tax bill. So again, this is just showing some historical information. You see kind of our current tax rate there and our proposed tax rate that we are discussing today at 0.1875. So that coupled with the decrease in the average taxable value of a single-family residential dwelling within Tarrant County going down, this budget with the average taxable value would show about a $35, $36 decrease in the average annual tax bill.
Is that only factoring in the proposed tax rate, or is that also factoring in if that single-family dwelling has a homestead exemption?
That, my understanding is that's the average taxable value, and I believe it does include the homestead exemption. Okay, so before I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next slide because I believe Ms. Buchanan will be coming up next. Just a couple of comments. So this is obviously my first year doing this, and I went back recently and watched last year's presentation and watched my boss, whose name is now on the building, how he did the presentations, the things he talked about. And one of the things that really stuck with me this year, now that I see it sitting in this chair that I didn't see before, is how much Tarrant County really is a family. And what I mean by that is while Helen and her group are really the tip of the spear for this budget process, there is a team of individuals behind this through the county auditor's office, HR, county administration, the tax office with their calculations. And again, that's just, again, I would say the head. It is a Herculean group effort from all of the elected officials, all of the appointed officials, to really come together, have conversations, have tough conversations about where we are, what we're doing, making sure that we're supporting them and what they need for their services. My eyes have really been opened over the last several months of just how much collaboration goes on behind the scenes to be able to sit here and to present this budget to you. So, and in fact, on top of that, one thing that I believe, and Commissioner Brooks or Fickus can correct me if my notes are wrong, one thing I think, unless anything's changed, Helen, since I stood up here, we're going to be able to tell you that we believe that every single department head and elected official has told us they are satisfied with their proposed budget for this year. So that being said, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, court members. I'm now going to turn it over to our county auditor to talk about estimated revenue for fiscal 25.
Good morning. Can you hear me? It's good to be here with you this morning, and just kind of like to give you, I need my glasses, sorry. Just an overview of kind of what we go through when we develop the revenue estimates, kind of how the sausage is made, as some would say. We look at how each department generates fees. We work with the departments, we get input from the departments, we look at property tax valuations, which we've all discussed that we have some concerns about this year, the economy. We look at interest rates. We have interlocal agreements that are taken into consideration, and then supplements from the state. So those are just a tip of what we have to go through. We also look at what the laws and statutes require along the way. So the first slide that you're looking at is just an overview of all the operating funds broken down by category. And then if you will take a look at, towards the end, estimated taxes for this year, net of TIFs, and that's the increment zones, is $511,960,940. So does anyone have any specific questions about that slide? If not, I can go ahead and move on. All right, next slide, major change elements. As the administrator mentioned earlier, one of the elements that we're changing this year is the resource connection. It's not only was it not self-sustaining, but over the years, we got guidance from the external auditors that we really should incorporate that fund into the general fund budget. And then we have increases in our jail psychiatric services. The medical examiner district contracts will be increasing. In the next line is the investment income, and that's due primarily to our spend down related to CARES, as well as any of us may know, whether or not the rate changes will really start taking place. And so what we took into consideration this year is Hilltop's interest rate sheet when we're looking at our cash flows as well as their rate sheets. So we do anticipate less interest income, which is something we need to take into consideration in the future. I looked at this morning before I was going to say 9/11, but COVID. We typically average $3 to $4 million in interest, so that's something we need to make sure that we keep in the back of our mind as we move forward in future years. And then taxes, the reduction in taxes, which is a result of the policies that this Commissioner's Court and TAD have implemented. Any specific questions related to that slide? Okay, with that. Cash carry forward. What cash carry forward represents is areas where we may not have spent as much as we anticipated, or more revenues came in than we anticipated. So this is the cash that we anticipate to have at the beginning of the year. for each of our major funds, general, road and bridge, and debt service. And with that, I believe we're on to the proposed budget, unless you have any specific questions for my office.
Any questions for Kim?
Cash carry forward, that's reserves. Does that become?
Part of it is reserves, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Judge O'Hara, Commissioners. I'm Robert Cohn. I'm the Assistant Director of Budget and Risk Management, and I'm going to provide you a high-level overview of some of the most important or key portions of the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget. So the proposed budget for all three operating funds totals $896,600,248. This is a decrease of approximately $50 million from fiscal year 2024. Of the $896 million, 758 of that represents the general fund portion. I'm going to begin by going over some notable appropriations that are included in the budget. First, the budget includes a $53.6 million transfer into our capital funds to fund future capital projects, and a $6.7 million transfer to the Road and Bridge Fund. The fiscal year 2025 budget contains structure, market, and merit and step increases for employees totaling $18.5 million. And in addition, there are 22 new positions, 15 in the general fund, 7 in the Road and Bridge, and those are offset by 21 position reductions for a net add of 1 position. Reserves have been recommended at $83 million in the general fund and $1.5 million in debt service. And additionally, as mentioned, the resource connection has been moved from an enterprise fund to the general fund, and the precinct's general administration has been moved from Road and Bridge Fund to the general fund. This is a detailed listing of the 22 new positions that were included in the budget, with 21 of them the result of increases in workload, and 1 of them the result of a new program being added. The column on the right indicates whether those positions were offset by reductions in cost or other positions. For the general fund, the cost of adding the position was $1.3 million, and the offset was $1.315. In regard to the use of cash carry forward that was just discussed, of the cash, $83 million is being used to fund the reserves. $7,419,751 is being assigned to undesignated. And cash is funding $53,606,578 in capital requests, for a total use of cash of $144,026,329. Total cash carry forward has been projected by the auditors to be $146,829,432.
So question, that cash carry forward on the previous slide, that has gotten lower each year, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. We're depleting our reserves, correct?
No, ma'am. We actually increased our reserves by $1 million. The capital funding has been decreased.
Okay.
I've got questions, and they revolve around the transfer of the resource connection to the general fund. First time I've heard it was this morning when this budget presentation began. While that may make sense from a general accounting point of view, it raises some questions for me. In particular, what happens to the reserve accounts that exist at the resource connection? Are they absorbed into the general fund?
No, sir. Those are being maintained in Fund 512. So those have been separated and are still solely for resource connection capital improvement needs going forward.
So operationally, what's different?
Instead of doing a transfer over, all the expenses are going to be in the general fund. offset by general fund expenses, offset by general fund revenue. So the operations are moving to the general fund rather than being segregated into an enterprise fund and then having the general fund make up the difference.
Am I on?
Should be.
Can you hear me?
No, I didn't know you were talking.
No, I just started, and so I don't know if my mic is on or not. So operationally, nothing will change for the Resource Connection. They'll continue to do business as usual. The only difference is the revenue that they receive from leases and the rentals that they had were not self-sustaining and self-supporting. And as Kim said, the county auditor said, the outside auditor had on numerous occasions brought that to our attention, that they were not truly an enterprise fund, and we needed to look at them differently. So we brought over all of the monthly revenue that exists, that will be happening, and any cash that was left over, as you ask, has been moved over into the royalty fund for only the use, which still exists, which will only be used for the improvements for the buildings out there. The other difference is the facilities now will be under the Director of Facilities. So they will be, and all of the personnel will report to him. So all of that expenditure will, and operational, whatever I'm trying to say, will now be under Mike Amador. The leasing of the buildings, taking care of the people who are currently leasing the spots will still be under the Director of Resource Connection. So operationally, it doesn't actually change. It's just, it's no longer on the finance side, an enterprise fund and brought over into general fund.
It just seems to me that the Resource Connection was established by the Commissioner's Court as an enterprise fund, and that to have it become otherwise as a function of a budget item rather than a decision by Commissioner's Court is a little bit putting the cart before the horse.
Commissioner, we went around and met with all the commissioners prior to us doing this, explaining what we were doing. Russell and myself went around to all the court members explaining
In the
this.
meeting that I had with y'all, this didn't come up. I assure you I would remember, because I'm the commissioner who is the liaison to the Resource Connection.
Can you help me understand what the issue is that why this is bothering you?
I'm trying to understand how it came about, under what authority it came about, and what the impact on the financial structure and on the operations of the Resource Connection actually will be going forward. I'm not saying that I agree or disagree. I'm saying that it's the first I've heard of it. I should have known about it in advance. I can see some pluses and minuses.
When it was articulated to me, because I've heard about it one time also, and the broad brush articulation was, it's not a self-sustaining fund, so the auditor recommended that we have to move it. So I didn't dig into it any further, but that was the justification that I was given, is that if it's not self-sustaining, auditors like it to be in general fund. So.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Any other questions on that item? Okay.
The budget also includes compensation adjustments for employees, as mentioned earlier. So then this slide provides the detail for what that compensation adjustment is. For non-law enforcement personnel in the general fund, the budget includes 3% merit at a cost of $6.2 million. Structure adjustments from 2 to 5% for approximately $750,000, and lump sum payments for $253,000. For law enforcement personnel, the budget includes structure increases from 4 to 7%, totaling $7.6 million, step increases totaling $1.5 million, and lump sum payments of just over $1.1 million. The 3% merit at a cost of $438,000 and $231,000 in structure adjustments, and a $4,700 in lump sum is also included in the road and bridge fund for those employees. This slide indicates the split of our current and proposed tax rate, as Mr. Barrett talked about earlier, between the M&O and the portion used for our debt service. As indicated, our low debt obligation allows for 0.171707 of the total tax rate to be used to fund general county operations, which is the M&O range. Each penny of the tax rate generates approximately $27.8 million in revenue. Our no new revenue rate was calculated at 0.188691, with the voter approval rate calculated to be 0.242016. The budget before you today is balanced to the 0.1875 rate, below the no new revenue rate. So finally, to summarize the operating budget before you at the highest level, the three operating funds, general fund, debt service, and the road and bridge fund, have a total proposed appropriations of $846,379,912, with available revenue including cash of the same amount, providing a balanced budget. Total capital requests were made in the fiscal year 2025 budget process of $88,665,634. We recommended capital projects in the amount of $53,606,578. Oops. Sorry. On September 17th, the court will adopt a tax rate, hold a public hearing on and approve the budget, and also hold a public hearing on and approve compensation for certain elected officials. This coming Tuesday, August 20th, the court will set the ceiling on the tax rate, which is the highest rate the court may adopt on September 17th. As noted earlier, the budget recommended before you has been balanced to a tax rate of 0.1875. And that concludes the presentation on the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget.
All right, any questions for Robert, Helen, or Chandler from the court? Do we have any department heads or elected officials that want to address anything on this?
All of the departments have notated to the budget office they are satisfied with their budgets. So to my knowledge, as of this morning when we walked in, there would be no departments requesting any additional money.
Okay.
You have two handouts in front of you. One has a title in green that says FY25 recommended budget satisfied department, and the other is a spreadsheet. In the email that I sent out when I gave you the recommended budget, I also notated that once the departments received their recommended budget, we would go through, and if they were not satisfied, we would work with them if possible. The spreadsheet that you have in front of you are the departments that we contacted in the end, or that contacted us asking for a variance of what we had recommended. And in the end, with all of the adjustments that we made, we put back into the budget $77,902 into the undesignated, and the rest are the requests that they've asked. Now, this also adds, I believe, 4 positions to the new position list. That is for Constable 2, Constable 7, 1 for Constable 2, 1 for Constable 7, and 2 for Constable 8, with offsetting expenses that will be maintained so that they will be able to add new positions for their heavy workload. With that said, I would like to request the court for their approval of the FY25 recommended budget, satisfied departments, which is your list, which would be every department in the county.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommended budget satisfied department list
With the adjustments.
with the adjustments. Okay, that was the motion and the second.
Judge.
All right.
Precisely.
Any discussion on that issue? All right, so we do have a couple of speakers.
And I have some.
Go ahead, you make them
Okay.
now. So-
All right. So Helen, I know that the court has contributed in excess of the required minimum to TCDRS, the pension system, for years. That has gotten us to a very healthy 90% funded scenario. I think that's reflective of good fiscal stewardship. Personally, I really hate to see us move back down to during a generally healthy economy. I think it sets a bad tone for our future and doesn't reflect well on the court's fiscal stewardship. Can you make me feel better about that?
So we met with TCDRS Tuesday, thank you. They're blurred, days are blurred. And we went over all of the different things that they presented to us and where we stand right now. The one thing that they said repeatedly and started the conversation with, Tarrant County is extremely healthy in their TCDRS contributions, and we will, at 11.88, again, that's the required rate, including a 1% COLA, we will remain at 90%. Actually, their sheets show 91%. And if we maintained the required rate going forward for the next few years, we would also be above the 91%. Now, I know that there were a lot of numbers that were said over the course of the last month. I think that they put all of our minds at rest when they explained to us how they calculated it, what they are, and how we moving forward. They said they would change some of their slides and change some titles so that it would be more understanding. They were thankful for us to pointing out some of these discrepancies. But in the end, if the market stays average, there are 3 scenarios that they give us: a worst case scenario, a down market, an average market, and an up market. And on the average market is what we're looking at. It would it would fluctuate between 91% now to 92.8% through 2028, and that's as far as out as they gave us projection. If we maintained the required rate plus COLA. So I will say my objective in the future is always to look first at seeing if we can increase our contribution rate. Their recommendation was at 14.5, and I believe with what the information they sent to us, gave to us, it is at least a healthy rate. If we can go higher, I would try that. But again, due to budget limitations is the only reason that I am balancing a budget to the required rate with COLA.
Okay. Next, I noticed in the Sheriff's Department under the confinement section that food costs are actually budgeted to decrease.
No, that's based on it's whatever the contract is. We get a contract from them.
Okay. It looked like the food costs line decreased.
Well,
and I'm like, how does that happen
okay, so
with Garza coming back and with the mental health diversion center going
So what
away?
we have to do is we have to look at, there's 2 components to that contract, and I may see if I can find Melissa. There's 2 components to that contract. One is the officers' meals, and one are the inmates' meals. And regularly we have to move money between the 2 because they are overspending, maybe special meals were having to be prepared. So there is a contractual amount that we have to put in there. But if the officers have less meals, we move that up to the inmate meals if it is going over. But it's an estimated amount based on the estimated amount of inmates that we will. It's the contractual amount based on the estimated amount of inmates that we will have.
So do you think I looked at maybe just the inmates?
I
It looked
don't
like
know,
it
but
decreased.
bottom line is, we are going to feed the inmates, and if we get to the end of the year, and the officers, if we get to the end of the year and need to do an appropriation adjustment to increase it, and because of the inmate population that we have been increasing it, so it may, I don't know if you were looking at the 2024 appropriation to the 25 requested budget, or the actual expenditures to the 25. I'm not sure what you were looking at, but either way, if we get to the end of the year and do not have enough money, we will supplement that.
Okay. All right, so you've reduced the council fees by $7 million, correct?
We've reduced council fees, yes.
Okay. I don't understand how we can be reducing council fees by that amount. I need a better explanation on how that can be when we're all asking judges to work harder, work more, and get to higher cases throughout. So, and I think legal fees are probably going to stay the same. How is this happening?
So in 2020, the state Supreme Court shut down the courts. And during that time, we didn't have any activity. The following year, we anticipated the activity to increase significantly. So we placed a significant additional budget on counsel fees, indigent defense. And we looked at 21s, 22s, 23s, and 24s, and realized that the additional amount that we had placed in the indigent defense was not needed, and we could actually reduce it back down to closer to what the actual expenses were. So we have, do you have a sheet, Jason? One of those sheets? So we have currently 2 places that we budget for judicial indigent defense.
Okay.
We do it in the actual courts, and we do it in what's called court judiciary. As I was talking to the president of the defense bar this morning, Miles Brissett, he said, well, it's kind of like a reserve. It's not really a reserve, but it is where we put additional funding because we do not know what's going to happen in any one individual court. So it could be that one court has all of their cases that are indigent defense, where another court doesn't need as many indigent defense attorneys on it. So we don't know where it's going to happen. We budget in the court, and then as needed, as you'll see on your appropriation adjustments that happen every Tuesday court meeting that we meet, that we are doing moving money from courts judiciary to the court, and that's usually all of August and all of September, because they have utilized all their money. We are very aware that the budget office is very aware that we are required to pay indigent defense, and we make sure that we have money available for that, and we have never not made money available for defense attorneys. So the money that was reduced was money that was not actually being used.
Okay. So this budget seems to be spending about $22 million in reserves. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean by that.
So are we, to meet this budget, are we?
So, thank you. Actually, thank you. Let me pull my budget book.
Okay.
I do know what you mean.
Okay.
Because of the limitations of our budgeting software, we were not able to actually reduce the retirement line item itself. And on in non-departmental, on the slides that Robert showed you, we said that we were actually increasing our reserves from 82 million to 83 million. But we do not have the ability to correctly reduce the TCDRS line item, our retirement line item. So we had to reduce the reserves with a footnote that reads, due to the inability of the county's budget system to reflect the changes of the TCDRS contribution rate with the COLA from 19.5 to the required contribution rate of COLA of 11.88, $22,997,558 was removed from reserves to reflect the absorption of the decrease. This was one of the sole line items with the general fund that could accommodate this decrease. Approval of the budget authorizes the Budget and Risk Management Department to transfer funds from the retirement line item back to the reserves to get it to 83 million. So we did not reduce our reserves at all. We just weren't able to fund it. We weren't able to realize it due to the limitations of our budget system, which, by the way, we have asked for a new budget system through the Capitol to be able to do that. So it is in general fund, it's in the non-departmental, and in road and bridge, it's under it's under right-of-ways, county right-of-ways. I've spoken to Scott Hall. He knows that the minute the budgets are approved and we do the retraction into SAP, we will take the money actually from the retirement line item and put it back into where we had to reduce.
So is this considered deficit spending?
No, because we did not take it, we're not using cash. We're actually going to take it from the retirement line where it actually should be and put it back down. We're actually increased our reserves. We're at 15.9% on reserves. That's higher than what we've been in the past.
All right. And so I have just one last question. We haven't talked about it out here publicly, but the Mental Health Diversion Center goes away, correct?
The contract ends on 12/31 of 2024. The funding is, with the help of Kristen Camarena, we are working on finding budget savings within MHMR. Kristen, if I'm saying anything wrong, please stand up. To find funding to get it through approximately April. But we're also working, the administration office is working with JPS and MHMR to find other funding sources for that. And we haven't arrived at the answer yet. They have not arrived at the answer, but it's still a work in progress, which is why we were looking for money to get us through April, because we thought we would maybe have a solution by then.
Okay.
But I do not have it in the general fund, in our operating budget. I cannot absorb it in our operating budget at this time.
Okay. And we are cutting our support for organizations like guardianship.
No, ma'am. So are you referencing the public assistance page?
Yes.
No, I think
Safe Haven.
Well, we made a footnote down there also saying we were moving that to various specialty funds that could absorb those costs. So guardianship services has been moved over to the opioid fund, settlement fund.
Okay.
It is an allowable cost there. And there were a couple of others that we moved to the opioid settlement fund, which, again, I'd have to look and see on public assistance exactly what that was. But we are not reducing any public assistance that y'all have approved in the past. We just simply changed their funding source.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second on this item. Do we have any other questions before we bring our speakers up?
I'll make a statement, Helen. I want to thank you and your team for doing brain surgery and getting this done. Obviously, you and I have spoken many, many times about the retirement system. I think I'm very, very, very concerned about that. But having TCDRS weigh in and say that the funding ratio continues to go up if the market remains sustainable. At first, it's counterintuitive, but having the explanation that the majority of our revenue, or the majority of that ratio, is funded by the investment returns. It's not even our contributions.
Right.
So the contribution is what, 10% of what it is. Anyways, they made it make sense for me, and so I got there, and my colleague, Commissioner Brooks, explained why I don't want to get to 100%, even though that would be my preference. So 90% is okay. But I appreciate all of y'all's work in this process. I have big ideas, I'll say it this way, on how we might be able to restructure in the next coming years, but I'm not going to drop anything life-changing on you at the final hour. So I appreciate what you've done.
So I would like to take a moment to say that the staff that's sitting against the wall is also audit and budget office. I have 2 budget analysts that haven't even met their 6-month probationary period. This was baptism by fire. So
Please stick around.
Would you all stand
You're
up? It's a small crew that does a lot of work. So
Who hasn't met their probationary period? You're gonna live or die by the vote that's happening in about 2 minutes.
Thank you, Judge O'Hare. I've got some general remarks to make concerning this budget and the budget process and county government in general. So I hope my colleagues will suffer me to make these remarks at this time. First of all, Helen Chandler, our auditor, all who had a hand in preparing this budget, congratulations. It is a magnificent piece of work put together under very difficult financial circumstances. Thank you for presenting us with a balanced budget this morning. This is my final budget. And to conclude 34 years of budgets with one that is balanced and has no opposition from any department head is a major, major achievement. So I thank you for your wizardry, Helen. And it is not lost on me what a difficult task this has been. It is also not lost on me that it's going to get even more difficult in the years ahead. If we continue at or below the no new revenue rate, there are going to be challenges for county government. There are going to be challenges in the delivery of services. I have always reveled in the fact that county government is the local safety net. County government is that body that stands between our citizens who have come upon a difficult place in life and hitting the ground with a splat. County government is that safety net. And there is perhaps constitutional authority that we should take on that role. Because in the preamble to the U.S. Constitution, one of the responsibilities of government is to promote the general welfare. Promote the general welfare. That means to make sure as much as possible that everybody's okay. That is the role that has fallen to county government. And I want to make sure that as we go forward, we keep that role in mind, that we as a body, as a commissioner's court, must promote the general welfare. Our charges to keep taxation at a minimum that is consistent with promoting the general welfare. We've done a good job of that. But I can see the handwriting on the wall that we're going to hit that wall, and we're going to have challenges in the future with promoting the general welfare. I would just beg you as a court to keep that role in mind as we go forward. Yes, we have to cut taxes, but we have to cut them in a way that is consistent with us carrying out the entirety of our responsibilities as a local body of government. And that includes promoting the general welfare. I would say to my colleagues that it has been a pleasure to work with each and every one of you. Gary, you and I go back a long, long ways. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. We have not always agreed, but that's okay. That's the way government works. It's the way it should work. We disagree, but we come to a consensus and we go forward for the benefit of those who sent us here. That's it. That's all I got to say.
All right, thank you,
Call for-
Commissioner Brooks. Do it.
Oh, I was going to call for a question on the motion, but you got to speak.
Yeah, we have two speakers, so anybody else have anything before we bring them up? All right, Julie Griffin and Nan Terry.
Good morning, Commissioners and Judge.
Good morning.
Right.
Thank you. I'm not an expert in budgets, and I did my best to wrap my mind around this document that I had access to for about a day, and I'm sure that some of the figures I cite will have errors and mistakes. And I also want to express my appreciation for all the hands and minds that went into this document, but mostly, and my critique doesn't take away from that, it mostly goes to the vision aspect of the budget. And I echo a lot in my piece here, Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Brooks, thank you so very much for all your years of service and your commitment to the general welfare in our budgets. You will have sworn an oath to the U.S. Constitution, whose preamble cites as a foundational purpose government promotion of the general welfare, and I believe this budget fails that purpose. I made a rough pie chart from the operating fund summary recap for the 2025 recommended budget, and it actually is kind of shocking. While 1% goes to community services, and I'm not sure what that covers, an estimated 40% goes to the criminal justice functions of county government. Public safety is 28%, plus I've estimated 12% criminal judicial as my guess out of the 20% overall judicial. 1% versus 40%. Think about it. Wouldn't we have a safe and more thriving county if we could invert some of that ratio? I compare the numbers from the jail and bond dashboard. With an overall budget of roughly $850 million, we spend roughly $50 million every 131 days in incarcerating our fellow citizens, which is about $135 million per year on jailing alone. So jail is about 16% of our total budget. And as you know, many of our incarcerated are those with low-level nonviolent offenses that could be dealt with through cite and release, personal bonds, mental health bonds, or diversion to the mental health jail diversion center, which I hope you will maintain, which would lower the jail population and save taxpayers millions of dollars, to say nothing of the fact that 50% or more of our incarcerated folks are among the community of those with mental illness or IDD, yet are jailed in myriad instances because of the behaviors stemming from disability or illness, not criminality. Many of them die in our jail. We are just housing them in jail. Speaking of housing, where is there a line item that shows that we spend resources on affordable housing or permanent supportive housing in our community? Maybe it's in a fund somewhere that I couldn't see. I'm so glad to hear that you're not actually canceling funding for One Safe Place, Safe Haven, All Children's Home Child Family Services, and Alliance for Children, because from what I could see, they were all cut to zero. And I do hope that, and I don't understand why it would be
Thank you.
opioid.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Terry.
Good morning. I want to take this opportunity to bring a little humor to you with the understanding that I really don't understand the budget. If you're not a fan of my humor, I apologize. But I do want to thank the staff for the hard work that brings us together today. And we all know that y'all are the staff, and thank you. Once upon a time, in a faraway place, which was much cooler, maybe 75, 60 degrees even, there was a fairyland budget, which looks somewhat like what we have in front of us today. Chandler, did you get that RFP for that magic wand? We may need it. On page 72, see the overtime for detention officers. The 23 actual amount was over $14 million. The appropriated amount for 24 was $1.3 million, while the actual year-to-date is over $13 million. The recommended budget for 25 is back to that $1.3 million. Hence, poof, a magic wand, poof, cap overtime at $1.3 million. In your packet, you have a sheet from the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. In 22, 78% of the felony charges in Tarrant County were defended with appointed counsel for cost over $14 million. There's been discussions about the indigent budget but what I'd like to ask is, are we actually thinking that we're going to decrease the number of indigents in Tarrant County that need legal funds? And is this another need for that public magic wand? Judge, in your State of the County address, it was reported you said you wanted to decrease the population of the county jail. How does this budget do that? I can't tell. As you know, I support the Jail Diversion Fund. I would use my magic wand to have your political action committees fund public service announcements explaining the advantages of diverting those with mental illnesses to appropriate facilities other than our county jail. In all seriousness, I would hope that next year you would have budget meetings for the public a month out with a preliminary budget with what the county leadership is thinking. And when the county administrator posts the agenda for the commissioners meeting, can you please link the budget to the online agenda? I appreciate, again, the county employees who explained where I could find the budget. Chandler and Commissioner Brooks, I appreciate the fact that everyone here agrees with the budget, but where's the input from the public? That's my question. Thank you for the increase in psychiatric care. But when you vote for the budget, please consider giving to Caesar that which is Caesar's, but also remember the Gospel of Matthew and consider the least of these. Thank you.
All right, that's all the speakers we have signed up. Court, are we ready to vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote. Okay, passes unanimously. So Helen, Robert, and your team, thank you. Thank you to all the departments for all the hard work. Thank you for providing tax relief to the citizens and maintaining services. Y'all did a wonderful job. I know y'all worked countless hours. Mr. Merritt, thank you and your team. Excellent work. And I will echo what Roy said, Commissioner Brooks said, the first time that we've ever seen every single department and every single elected official say I'm content with the budget is pretty remarkable, and that's excellent work by y'all. So thank you. In light of this, I would make a motion that we cancel tomorrow's scheduled court meeting since there's no need to do it.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on that. Any discussion? All right, please cast your vote. All right, passes unanimously. And with that, we are adjourned. No, we are not adjourned.
I would just like to make one announcement. Everybody in this room is probably aware that we lost Fort Worth Officer Billy Randolph on Monday. He was killed by a drunk driver going the wrong way on a freeway. We'll have a celebration of life service for him at Christ Chapel Church on Saturday at 10 a.m. Everybody at the public, or in the public, is invited to come. So we'd appreciate your presence. The family was really touched by everybody who came out last night. So Billy was a great man.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, with that, thank you again for being here. Thank you for all your hard work. We are now adjourned.